Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Lawrence Watkins, and we're on the Black Financial Channel on YouTube. Hope everyone's doing well. I'm here with Jullien Gordon, my great friend, business partner.
Mm.
We have something new for you today in terms of leveraging something bigger that we're working on, and we're going to explain it here in a second. But before we get to all that, man, Jullien, it's always great to see you.
You too,
We
man.
got this new show that we're going to do, so let's tell the audience about what we're up to and how we're doing.
Yeah, man. So, Lawrence and I have we've been embarked. He's recently embarked on fatherhood. I've been a father for 4 years now, almost 5 years, and we have taken the idea of freedom beyond just ourselves. When you have offspring, it goes beyond you, and you start thinking about century. You start thinking about your 100-year plan and how you're going to pass on wealth to your grandkids and your grandkids, and so. Lawrence and I have just been, we talk all the time. We talk at least 4 times a week, even though I'm in New Orleans and he is in Medellin. And it's always a conversation around Black family wealth. It was before he was a father, it was just Black wealth in general. But now I think it's been Black family wealth. And ultimately, most people who are single and African American, they will have a family. But even if you don't have a family, don't decide to get married or have kids, you're still connected to a family, right? And if we're trying to create generational wealth, we need to work together. But we haven't had a master plan or a blueprint to actually do that. And so Lawrence and I have just taken it upon ourselves to actually identify what that master plan and that blueprint is for us. I mean, we follow in the footsteps of giants. Some of our favorite books are Powernomics, right? Powernomics, White Wealth, Black Labor. We've read all those, and then even beyond our culture, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and things of that nature. But we're like, we as Black people have a unique position in this country where assets have actually been intentionally kept from us. And so how do we navigate and create wealth when there's all these barriers that we have that a lot of other people simply just don't have? So that's what is on our mind at night. That's what we wake up to. And that's what we're thinking about when we're going to bed. And we just want to bring that conversation live to share with everyone as we uncover it for ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing too, is just like this process of uncovering what is the optimal wealth plan for ourselves. Because I know me, we've had a lot of conversation. You've done a whole bunch of things right, to the point where now you're virtually financially free.
Yeah.
And I made a lot of great decisions in my life, but one thing that I didn't really focus on over the last 10 years is building substantial wealth for myself. Right. So I built a business for myself, and I could tell people how to do that. I could tell people, especially, how to be a solopreneur, and just how do you go about building systems, for yourself to make a living, right, and to make enough money to live off of. But now that I have this child and I have a wife, and an 8-month-old daughter, just something in me has started to change, right? And like before, it was all about myself and how can I get the most amount of value at the least amount of work. To now, it's like, how do I set my children up, set my child up for the future, so that they could, that they can live right. And I realized also that I have all this education, right? So I have an undergrad degree in engineering, have an MBA, I've started a business. But even with all that, it wasn't until maybe like 2 or 3 months ago, when we were doing research for the next Freedom Family launch, I finally realized that I was in large part very financially illiterate. Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff as it related to personal finance that I did not know, or I knew, but I didn't really follow the advice. And now that now I'm kind of kicking myself of going or making certain decisions, because what I realized that I was doing is I was living for the Lawrence of right now, and 2007, 2008, 2010, 2015, and not really thinking about the Lawrence of the future and what he would care about in 2022 and 2030 and 2035 and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So this project for me, actually, in terms of developing the wealth plan, going through all the literature, the research, talking to people, this process for me is kind of therapeutic, right? In terms of like, all right, I spent, the first 35 years of my life where a lot of this stuff was a mystery to me. And now I get to come back and be a learning leader. So as I'm learning, we get to share this process with other people in our community,
right?
So that they make better decisions than we did. And also at the same time, they still make some of the same decisions that, I did that I think really drastically improved, my life for the better.
Yeah. Yeah. So the thing is the money journey, I think you can read about it in books, but it's not until you actually have some skin in the game that you really start to understand it and to learn it. And I think especially if debt is, we know that debt is crazy in our community. I think a lot of people have money shame, and they just hope and pray that the debt is going to magically go away. Some of that debt will get passed on to the next generation, and some will go away when you die. But the way I define debt is simply trying to reap faster than you've sown, right? It's just trying to reap faster than you've sown. You're borrowing against your future. But as fatherhood kicked in and parenthood just in general kicks in, you start thinking about the future. You start coming out of the not coming out of the now, not coming out of the moment so much so that you aren't actually ever living here and now. Because my best friend, his dad, and he gave me permission to share this. His dad was always living for the future, right? And he never enjoyed the moment. And my dad, it is very similar. And his dad died like 3 months after retirement, right? And so even as he was getting older, he told his son that he wished he would have spent more of his money, right? And not just been hoarding it and saving it and things of that nature. And so my best friend, he's moving a lot differently based on his dad's advice and actually experiencing that as the son. So it's this balance of trying to make sure that we enjoy life now, but also be thinking about the future and generational wealth. And there's just been other cultures that have been able to, I guess, I don't know. It's hard for Black people to undergo delayed gratification because we were delayed gratification for so long. So it's like, I already had my delay. What do you telling me you want me to delay more when I've already had my delay? Like, this shit has been on hold for, excuse my language, it has been on hold for 400 plus years. Like, no, I'm gonna live it up now. I can't delay anymore, right? So I think that's one of the psychological things that we have to deal with as a people, because if we keep living it up and leaving the next generation with no momentum and they're starting from zero, then we never get a compounding curve from generation to generation to generation, and that's what's happening for other cultures.
Yeah, and I like, what you talk about in terms of compounding, right? Because a lot of finance is based upon this concept of compounding interest, where, your money just grows quicker the longer it's been compounding. So, the difference between how much money you make between year 1 and year 2 is very different than between year 22 and 23. For example, right? And like just the whole, it seems like the entire industry of finance is based upon this concept of, compounding interest in some sort of fashion. At least from an investment standpoint. What do you think about that?
Yeah. So the thing is, the American dream, it actually causes you to disrupt the compound effect from generation to generation. So it tells you to go get this high paying job and save up for retirement, and now you've saved up this nest egg, or you've saved up all your acorns. But then in the last 20 years of your life, or 15 years, the whole retirement plan is actually set up for you to chip away from that compounding. So you build up and you work hard from 22 to 65 to save up this nest egg to live off for the next 15 years. But the reality is that unless you die early, you actually end up leaving very little for the next generation. And so this is why I've actually been so focused on cash flow as opposed to always trying to hit home runs, because my cash flow that I've been able to generate thus far, which will be even greater once the mortgages are paid off 30 years or less from now, I'm gonna be able to pass on that cash flow to my daughter forever. I mean, forever. That cash flow, if I train her right, will stay in our family forever. Like it's work and decisions that I'm doing right now that I get to benefit off of right now. This is why I'm fully financially free right now. But it's also going to stay in our family forever. But I think the traditional entrepreneur culture tries to tell you to go after all these ideas and hope that one hits big, right? And the reality is that even if you're a great baker of cakes, it doesn't mean that you're going to make a great cake business, right? So not every great idea that one has is actually a great business, or it could be a great business, but you may not be the best person to actually create and grow that business. And I think that's what I was sucked into, that like keep trying these ideas and hope that something hits big. And I was overlooking this very simple business model in terms of real estate for so long because I was trying to swing for the fences. Now, do I think you should swing for the fences? Sometimes when you really found something, I think you should go all in and swing for the fences when that's the case. But you can also give yourself some comfort swinging for the fences when you have additional business model that is consistent and has been proven for centuries and centuries and centuries, and actually millennia. It's been proven. Like the feudal system, that was, I mean, we as people of African descent and even Native Americans, we didn't believe in the concept of property to the way that our other brothers and sisters do. But I mean, you go back to feudalism, what is that? Landlords, right? That the feudal system is all based on land and military, et cetera. So this model has been proven. Of course, we want to do it in an ethical way that doesn't oppress people who are on the lower rungs at this moment in time. So yeah, if we look at compounding not as, okay, the average American man lives till 80, and for a Black man, it's shorter. What if we just looked at our compounding line, instead of looking at it as me, my generation, then my kids, what if we just looked at it as one line? What if it was just one line? Now we start to see the hook, but we have to, one generation has to be willing to make that sacrifice to do the lower end part of the curve before the quote unquote hockey stick begins to take off.
Yeah, no, that's interesting in terms of expanding your time horizon, right? Yeah. Because I think, I was reading a book this morning called Family Inc. On my walk this morning, and basically, from this West Point guy who went to, I think, Harvard Business School or whatever. He has a financial management company now, or a wealth management company, and he talks about how looking at like something over a longer time horizon often decreases the amount of variability or the amount of risk associated with a particular asset class of investments.
Yeah.
So I like what you said in terms of, what does it look like instead of looking at the 50 years of your life? What does it look like if you look at the 50 years of investing of your life from, let's say, age 20 or 60, however long, how many years it is, 70 years, and you start looking at it in terms of like 100-year cycle or 110-year cycle. And, that goes back to what Boyce talks about in terms of like the 100-year plan of, estate planning. And, looking at LeBron James at age 4, nobody could ever tell he was going to be, this massive superstar that he is today, the best basketball player in the world. Right. Yeah. So it takes a while to, really see what investments are going to turn out good and which ones aren't. But even if they all turn out just okay from like a wealth growing standpoint, slow and steady, it usually works in one's favor.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And so one thing that I'm on right now is I have my high net worth skills that I use to go get cash, but cash is the lowest yielding asset in the entire world. It's yielding about 0.03% right now. So I don't want cash, but I use that cash to go purchase assets. And right now, my mindset is actually to purchase a multifamily home every single year for the rest of my life. And so imagine if I do that and execute that strategy, or even do it even more, right? Because right now I have 3 deals in contract right now. So that would, right now I have 5 multifamily homes. I started in 2013, but I didn't get my next one until 2017. So I want some equity built up in the first one, and I'm leveraging that equity. But imagine each one of those doors, just like say each one of those doors produces, actually, usually if I'm buying multifamily and I'm buying one every single year, that's at least 2 doors because it's a duplex, right? So if I do that for a 40-year period, I have 80 doors. Now, if each of those doors is generating $500 in profit and cash flow, right? Now that's $40,000 in passive income per month by the 40 years from now, right? just simply by committing to buying one cash flowing multifamily home every single year. And that 40,000 is not just what you are going to be able to live off of for retirement when you stop being able to use your cash generating skills. But it's a revenue stream and a cash flow that you get to pass on to the next generation, and they can eat off of and do with whatever for the rest of their life, and then pass that on forever. I mean, when you look at some of these, I look at the assessor's office all the time, and you see properties being handed down from family member to family member due to death and transfer of the estate. Some of these properties have been in families. They got them for $5,000, and now they're worth $1 million because it's the demand for housing is never going to leave unless the population starts to decrease. It's just never going to leave. And so I admit to getting caught up with shiny bells and whistles and things of that nature, and I was losing my focus. Again, the real estate actually gives me the freedom to go try and take risk on these bigger home run swings where I'm just swinging for the fences and trying to swing as hard as possible, you know? So that's how I see it, man. But I'm just trying to think about, I don't know, some people don't care what they leave for the next generation because nothing got left for them, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's like, oh, I figured it out, and I'm doing all right. But I'll be honest, the boomers have been able to ride a huge wave. I mean, yeah, the stock market, if you were just an average boomer, like you were just doing the basics, you got to go for a ride. If you bought a property in your late 20s or early 30s as a boomer, if you started doing that 401k stuff and just playing the indexes, right? Not even guessing which stock is going to grow. As boomers, they're going to claim their greatness, right? But in many ways, all they had to do was ride the wave. Now, these our generations, Generation Y, Generation Z, we're facing a more volatile economy that is already at its peak. And the question is it going to keep on peaking and go up forever? Or is there going to be some fluctuations and course corrections? So it'll be interesting to see, but the boomers are going to transfer a lot of wealth once they pass on in about 20 to 30 years. But a lot of that's not black, and not a lot of that wealth's not going to black people. And so that's actually going to put us at more of a disadvantage when that wealth transfer does occur. When you're 50 years old and your parents pass on, and all of a sudden you get an influx of $3 million in 4 properties from your parents, like that's going to set us even further back. But the thing is, I'm not comparing. There's no need to compare, right? We just need to do what's best for us. And I hate these charts that compare white versus black. Good. I'm glad that they're benefiting and they're winning. Go ahead. I'm just focused on us right now.
Yeah, I mean, I love that in terms of just being focused on us, because the quickest way to be unhappy with your life is by comparison. Yeah. Consistent comparing yourself to other people.
Facts, man.
In other groups, and also, even if we did everything right today, the way that compounding interest works, and just the art of compounding, or the philosophy behind compounding is, it's going to take probably another generation or two for us to really start to see that hockey stick curve.
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say who's really killing it, honestly, is the Asians. Asians are actually making more money than any other culture, and per capita, I think they're generating more wealth than any other culture, but they've kind of done it under the radar, and nobody's really partly because of their size, because of their somewhat small size, they're able to work together. They also have language that they can use to communicate with each other. That is exclusive language that other people can't eavesdrop on, right, without a translator and an insider. So. And so when Doc went out to Asia and he did that course on, how to build empire, I think that's really relevant. I mean, China, and they also get their stronghold from the way China is moving. China doesn't care about America. Like, granted, they have a lot of, America owes it, so it owes it a lot of money. So it kind of needs America to flourish because of all the money borrowed. But China's like, look, we're doing our own thing. We're closing our walls. This and that. We'll open up occasionally, but we're doing our own thing. right? This is, and granted, it's communism, and some people don't agree with that model. I'm not for it or against it, but they're saying, look, we're going insular. We're not worried about the rest of the world right now. We are going insular, and we are focusing on us. And I think that has, regardless if you agree with communism or not, I think that that has caused their economy to boom and to grow in ways, and we can take from that without it necessarily being communistic, you know?
Yeah, or it is, or whatever. So I
Yeah,
think
it is.
the biggest thing is, finding what system works best for us with the assets that we currently have, with the culture and the mindset that we currently have, where we can easily and most effectively switch to something that's going to make us prosperous.
Yeah.
Right. And when I say prosperous, I'm not just talking about financially prosperous, but what's going to secure our communities, from place to place to place, and then B, what's going to make us, feel like we have a happy and fulfilled life.
Yeah.
Worth money being one tool in terms of making that happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know what, political structure is going to be, socialism or communism on one end and straight capitalism on the other end, or socialism in between, or whatever it is, I don't know. Well,
yet. I'll tell you probably what it is. It's probably exactly what the nation is doing. And this is why the Nation of Islam is being silenced right now, with Farrakhan's accounts being deleted by social media, because he's providing solutions for us. He's kind of created a community that an ecosystem of community and people in the context, in the belly of the beast. Perhaps it's that model, but not being so vocal. But are you able to grow without it being vocal? Are you able to grow in secrecy? Are you able to create a Chinatown, a Koreatown, a little India, etc., without people encroaching? Like, there's no little Indias and no Chinatowns being burned down by white people. It's just, there's not. But when it comes to us, when we gather in that kind of way, people like get furious. It's like, it's the weirdest thing in the world. Like, we're trying to not rely on you. And then when we try to lift ourselves up, you try to cut us down. So it's just the race politics around wealth is very interesting.
It is. It is. I definitely agree with that. But one thing that I respect about, I guess, the forefathers of America is there have been times where cities have been burned down in the past by the French, by just other countries coming in, winning wars.
Yeah.
And what did America do? They rebuilt, in some form or fashion, right? They were pissed off about DC being burned and other cities being burned, and those types of things. Chicago completely burned down in the 1800s. Now, that wasn't like a race war type of thing, but nevertheless, Chicago was gone as a city. Yeah. And then, people just rebuilt it, right? Yeah. And, it was a massive loss of wealth at the time, but they knew that the benefits of rebuilding, these cities outweigh the cost in terms of what was the cost in that day and age,
Yeah.
And I think we can learn from that too, because I think a lot of us are fearful, and rightfully so. We go back to, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and
Rosewood.
Everything. Yeah, Rosewood, and how just our communities were burned down. And, as bad as that was, as tragic and terrible as that was, like, we just have to understand that, that's just probably what's going to happen to us at some point in time. And we just need to really rebuild, protect ourselves better, learn how to protect ourselves better, but then also just have this mindset of, we're going to, no matter what other communities actually do to us, we're going to do what's necessary, do what it takes to make sure that our families are secure, free and happy.
Yeah, I mean, Katrina happened here where I live, and in 2005, and that's equivalent to a city being burned down. The Black home ownership rate here at that time was through the roof. Of course, the Ninth Ward got flooded like crazy, and a lot of African Americans lost their home. Might not have had flood insurance, so a lot of wealth was lost in the midst of that. But there are also a lot of Black people. While gentrification is happening very heavily here as a result of buying properties that never got relived in after Katrina, there's also a lot of opportunity for Black wealth to still own New Orleans in a way, as a result of being able to, it almost level in some ways. If the insurances were right and you actually got your insurance money back, in some ways it actually levels the playing field. As crazy as that sounds, in some ways these destructions, as long as it's not just a Black community, can actually level the playing field. You get those insurance monies and you actually get to make a new decision about where you want to invest that money, what neighborhood, this and that. And so Yeah, it's very interesting, but those, of course, are the larger things. I think in terms of this podcast, we're trying to focus on what you as an individual can do every day, because we can't worry about some crazy people coming and burning down our 100 businesses that we haven't even built yet, right? This is really about what we can do on a daily basis. And what we want to focus on with the Black Family Financial Plan is really, first and foremost, you recognizing that you are the greatest asset in your family, or you and your significant other. Hopefully, if you have that, you don't have to have that, but you just understanding yourself as an asset, right? As an ability to create value in the world, solve problems for other people, and get some cash for that. And if you can get equity for it, that's also great. But then from there, once you have this excess, because Lawrence and I went to business school, we know a lot of people who are making six figures. Once you have that, and you have what, I don't know why people come up with this word disposable income. Like, ain't no income disposable. Like, that's the worst language in the world. But it had to be something connected with consumerism, right? So once you have this excess, what do you do with it? How do you get that money to work for you in the now, right? Because we're not just delaying gratification where you're unhappy for your entire life, but then your kids are happy. No, what can it do for you now? And then also, how do you start planning for your kids? How do you take all the financial mistakes that you may have made and make sure that your kids don't make them, whether that's credit cards? Like Lawrence asked a question on Facebook yesterday, and we were talking about, it was about the different transitions. So people talked about, starting to start paying your kids as an employee in your business, because it can reduce your tax liability, because they can get like $10,000 without it being taxed, right? The transition from how to start building their credit at the age of 3 by putting one of your cell phones in their name. The transition from high school to college. From college. What's up?
And paying the bill.
And paying the bill, yes. Not the other way, because it's all kinds of jokes about us in terms of putting your cell phone bill in your kid's name and not paying the bill, messing up their credit, right? You got to pay the bill. So it was high school to college, right? The student debt. Then college, the first job. What is the kind of right first job to take, or should we just go straight for entrepreneurship? Then it was from renting to homeowner was a big transition. Single to married was a big transition. Married to divorce was a transition. Starting a business to making a profitable business, profitable business to selling a business, and then
children.
Oh yeah, then no children to children. So these are some of the big financial, big decisions that actually have financial implications that, if you do them strategically and you are intentional, can actually bear tons of fruit.
Right, and the legacy piece too, in terms of, you have grandchildren now. What do you want to do with the wealth that you've accumulated?
Yeah.
For the next generation.
Yeah.
And that's why I really like what you're talking about in terms of that link and looking at a larger time horizon than just, a person's life.
Yeah. I think Dame Dash said it. Who you hustling for, your first or your last name, right? Mm-hmm. Who you hustling for, your first or your last name? Like the Watkins family, y'all hustle for the Watkins. Like with your family business meetings, things of that nature, it's a family affair. But I think, I don't know, we're in a very individualistic time in society, and I think people only think about themselves, whether they're married or not, and it's still it's very selfish and ambitions. But it's interesting. It would be interesting to understand the wealth of people who don't have kids, because I wonder if they get triggered in any way, and do they care? Are they just trying to burn out with nothing because you can't take it with you, or are they actually creating wealth to leave for a cause or something like that? That would be interesting.
A lot of them, I don't know, actually. I don't have the stats around that. I was watching a YouTube video on a YouTube channel I like called Today I Found Out. So basically it's a YouTube channel that provides information about just interesting stories from the past that you wouldn't normally think about. Like, what was the day-to-day like for an executioner back in medieval Europe or something, right? They'll just ask something like that. But they gave a story about a lawyer who was rich, who created like this like complicated will because he was like a prankster, a jokester. Basically, I think it was in like Canada or something. It was basically to the effect of like in the year 1908, whoever has the most kids, by this time they get half of my wealth or something. or something crazy. It was like, so he was just
right. He's trying to pass on that name.
Yeah, he was just making up stuff just because she's like, I don't have any kids, so at least I go out and just make a joke about it or something.
Yeah.
That's on one extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yes, it's just I'm just curious in terms of what do people do if they don't have children?
But that was a trigger for me. That was a trigger for me, and obviously it was a trigger for you. And perhaps it's because it's actually when you're single that a lot of these important decisions are being made. Because I think a lot of people foresee themselves having kids, but it's the decision that you're making when you're single and you're not even engaged in a significant romantic relationship. It's those decisions that are actually shaping the future. It actually determines who you end up attracting as a partner, even. And when you can combine two empires or two people with empire state of mind, it can be very powerful. But if you combine two consumer minds, it can be very detrimental.
And even before then, man. So like, I was just thinking through, and with this whole project, one thing that I'm really trying to do is come with a beginner's mind, you know what I mean? Or just a learner's mind where I'm trying to remove all the assumptions in terms of what I think is good, what I think is a good investment, what I think is a bad investment, and just really see what other people are doing. And when I'm trying to learn something new, I always approach it from that particular perspective, right? Yeah. And I'm just kind of curious. And I think a couple things have stood out to me. You have made money mainly in real estate. Well, you earn money from your business, right? Or from your business, from your physical labor, your skill, your labor in terms of
time. I did have to sell time. Yes.
Yeah, that type of thing. That's what helps you earn money. But now you're investing that money, that the money that you are not consuming or whatever, or saving. You are using that so that you could build your wealth into income producing assets. And the income producing asset that you have chosen is real estate. For the most part in that particular scenario. While, I read other books, there's The Simple Path of Financial Freedom, I think is called, by JL something. I can't remember what it is, but he's all about the mutual fund, you know what I mean? Or the S&P 500, index fund, to, put your money there. And somebody else is about another asset class, you know what I mean? And it's interesting to me to where I'm just trying to take a step back now. And really, I'm thinking about things in terms of assets and liabilities. No matter what that asset is or that liability, like, is that an income producing? I think the two biggest things and something you said actually too. I'm gonna get to that in a second on my Facebook page or Facebook profile. Is it income producing? That's a big question. And is it appreciating in value? Right. Like, those are two big questions. And you talked about that in terms of labor when I asked, what are the skill sets that students need to learn now to maximize their labor in the future, or their skills in the future? What are the skills they need to learn now to maximize, their worth in the future? And you're like, they need to learn a skill that's marketable today, that's good for today's market. And they need to learn a skill that's marketable for the future too. And I think, if we look at things from that perspective, I think we could do two things. One is, create a plan that's comprehensive for people to really follow in terms of just the general principles that you need to learn about, but then also just come up with a whole bunch of different tactics and strategies that people may not have thought about in terms of, how to build wealth faster for your family. Case in point, earlier today, we were talking about how the government, just through legal systems and laws and that type of thing, they are promoting certain investments and detracting from others. So the United States promotes home ownership, and the laws reflect that. Or they promote opportunity zones where you don't have to pay any income, or you can defer income tax for 7 years for things that you put into those particular investments. And I think we miss out on a lot of that stuff as Black people because we just don't know. And then even if we're in the know, what I'm finding too is there's a big difference for me learning this stuff, like you said, and from books and creating models and strategies from that particular perspective, and actually having the experience of investing or allocating, resources.
Yeah, it's one thing to read about buying foreclosed houses or watch a YouTube video. It's another thing to go to that actual sale, right, and see people just throw out $300,000 for a property that you wanted to bid on at 150, right? That's a whole different experience. And for many people, they've just outsourced their wealth services, and I think there's time to outsource it, but I think there's a fine line, right, between outsourcing your wealth building. Because like if I say, yo, your money's with Charles Schwab, okay, call Charles up. Can't talk to Charles, right? Many people don't know who the heck is actually managing their money. It's kind of like, I just hope this financial expert does it. So I think you have to know just enough. Like I'm doing this with my general contractors who work on my houses. Like I know enough to be able to understand and assess the problem to make sure I'm not getting ripped off. But then I know that in terms of the execution of the skill set, and perhaps the skill set requires a license, then that's when I pass on the baton. But I think a lot of people are in the complete dark, and then they're just panning over their hard-earned money to somebody who they have never met, and don't know what their motives or incentives are in terms of how they're paid within that organization. What if their incentive was just to get you in and they get paid off of that? Then they'll tell you anything. But if their incentive is based on the growth of your portfolio, then they're actually going to be operating in your best interest. But a lot of these bank CEOs, even when the bank loses money, they still getting bonuses. How is that? How does that work? That doesn't work, right? So yeah, you gotta know enough to be able to not get ripped off, and it's a fine line.
Well, I think that there's a lack of understandings of just the basics and the principles in terms of how money works, or how, not even just money, just how things work, right? And I've experienced this too. And it's not only money that I have a lack of knowledge of. Like you can look at things like the legal system, or taxes, which is part of money, but like there's just a lot of different things that you could really look at where people don't have a complete understanding of it, or even a basic level understanding of it in terms of the fundamental principles of how something works. And when you don't have that, that leads to you getting ripped off. Understanding. I was even thinking about the movie, The Big Short. Have you seen The Big Short?
Yeah.
Yeah, about the 2008 the housing crisis, financial crisis. And you had all these complicated products and all these really smart people who didn't know that the whole market was just about to crash, because no one actually looked at the numbers. No one actually understood what they were selling. No one really knew what was actually going on from that perspective. Yeah. And I think that, on one hand, we could say, how could they not know? I mean, look what happened to the economy. Yeah. But the other hand, we could say that about our own lives. Like, how did we not know X, Y, and Z was going to happen if we didn't, get insurance? Or how did we not know, so many different things? And I think our normal state of existence is not knowing, and it takes a high level of intentionality to really learn the skills necessary to protect your family financially and grow financially moving forward.
Man, it's good. Yeah. I can see why people buy into the nuclear family, because it's one home, it's two cars, it's two kids, and it's just pass my money on to somebody else and stay at this job, because it's, from a mental standpoint, it's a lot simpler. But as you start trying to invest in various ways, it gets complex, because the insurance wormhole is huge, and there's experts who know niches within there. Then you get into the real estate, and then there's buy and hold, there's flip. Then you try to go into the stock markets, then derivatives, then you're trying to go into cryptocurrency. It just can get so complex so fast. And I think some people just default to, look, I'm just going to do this and hope that it all works out, man, because I don't have enough mental capacity to try to know enough about all those different things to make my money work at maximum potential. So I'm going to settle for a lower return and cross my fingers that this guy over here, who I only met once, is going to do the best thing in my interest, because it gets so complex. Even as I'm in real estate, like it wasn't until these 3 deals that are on the table where I'm really putting all my eggs in a basket, where I decided, you know what, I took on the identity. I'm a real estate investor now. And before like a month ago, I was like, I invest in real estate, right? It's one thing to say I'm a writer, then it's versus I write. I write versus I'm a writer. So recently I took on the identity, and with that identity means that I'm going to have a whole another level of expertise and understanding and commitment to mastery. And so I think people just find it easier to find themselves in the middle of an organization where nobody sees them, they're not making too much noise, and they're not messing up too much to get noticed, and just ride it out and hope that this pyramid scheme called the corporate ladder actually somehow leads them to the top, and their checks just get bigger and bigger over time.
The corporate ladder, you thinking your pension's going to be there, you know, just like, you know, a whole bunch of different things in terms of, you know, doing, you know, the quote unquote, what is the right thing. Yeah. And I mean, it's a risk. It's definitely a risk factor. And I still think that's better a lot of times than just being out here confused and having paralysis by analysis. You know, at the same
confused and making decisions, uninformed decisions.
Yeah, or making confused and making bad decisions. Right? Yeah, exactly. There could be, you know, I think most people can live a sustained life by just following the path that other people have followed, right? Now, I'm not saying like a fulfilled life. I'm not saying, you know, a great life or anything like that. But I don't even think that's the worst path to follow. I don't know. I don't think that's worth.
Here's what my friend told me about me versus him. Like our net worth, they're about the same, right? But what he said is that you did it your own way. So it's not so much about how you make money, how much money you make, but it's more about how you actually make money, because that's where you're spending a lot of your time. So if you're making money and you're doing something that you absolutely hate, you're giving that fulfillment part of the equation, because there's a fulfillment and there's the financial, right? The fulfillment part of the equation is absolutely empty, right? But then you're getting maximum, or you believe you're getting maximum financial. But if there is actually a way to do both, where you're being fulfilled and you're getting financial, then that path and that life is going to be more joyful than the person who just went after the highest paying job, even though they quickly realized that they hated it. So it's not just about how much money you make, it's actually how you make money. I mean, I see people who make less money than me, and when I see this smile on their face and just their energy, I'm like, dang, you happier than me right now. And I just got to admit that, you know what I'm saying? And those are moments, because I love what I do, but I'm just saying I can tell when somebody, even despite what they might be earning from the work that they do, I can tell when they're just joyful. They're just joyful, and yeah, I can just tell when I witness it.
Yeah, I think it all goes back to goals, right? In terms of, you know, what are your goals for your life? And, you know, I actually hit a milestone, or we hit a milestone, or a mini milestone yesterday.
Okay.
You know, in our family, and that was getting a certain signature on our child Amina's birth certificate.
Oh yeah.
That allows her to get her Colombian passport.
Woohoo!
Yeah. So it was always important for me for my children to be dual citizens, you know. And I use that.
Did I hear S? Did I hear children? I hear plural in there.
We'll see. Child right now, but maybe children. I love my little girl. If I say I want more just like her. But yeah, I mean, yeah, so it's like it was important for me to have her be a dual citizen. And the reason was not just for the fact of being a dual citizen, is you never know what's going to happen in the United States. You don't know what's going to happen. So it's an additional piece of security to where if stuff started to mess up in one part of the world, she can always go to another part of the world.
Yeah.
And actually, I think there's some type of loophole where, like, if she is 18 or 21 or something like that and has a Colombian passport, or she was a Colombian citizen, she is then able to apply for European Union citizenship. So which opens up like more of the world to her, right? And I know it's just
college,
or in college too, right? Just a lot of different things, you know. And it was important for, you know, my child to be not just a citizen of the United States, but a global citizen of the world, have opportunities and not just think about the United States. So I view that, even though it's not financial wealth, I view that as a big piece of wealth and a goal in terms of how I want my family to be structured, right? So it goes back to the how thing, right? So I could have went and got an engineering job or went and got a consulting job after business school or whatever. But you're right. It is, going back to, how one goes about making money. And one of the best books that I've read so far is, I wouldn't recommend it to everyone yet because it's very analytical. It's very theoretical in many different ways, but it's called The Geometry of Wealth. Mm-hmm. And what he says, wealth is or whatever, financial wealth especially, is funded contentment. You know what I mean? So it's like, you don't really need the money to do, like, you're using that money so you have the security to do whatever you want to in your life, or if you want to consume something extra or whatever it is, but it's there to fund whatever's going to make you content in your life. Yeah. And I really like that definition.
I love it too. Frank Sinatra, Elvis Presley, Jay-Z, I did it my way, right? Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, when I look back, was I doing it somebody else's way, my parents' way, some employer's way, et cetera, or did I do it my way? Like, that's where when we are doing when our purpose, passion, and profit are aligned, meaning that we're able to be who we desire to be, we're doing what we love to do, and we're making enough funded contentment. We're making enough of what we need to continue being who we desire to be and doing what we desire to do. And that's the cycle right there. That's funded contentment in a nutshell. And guess what? It does not take $1 million a year or in savings to actually do that. I don't have $1 million in savings, but I have funded contentment. Like, I have funded contentment. I could stop working right now. I could go to the park. I could do whatever. I could take a nap today. I could do whatever I want with my time. I've designed my life in such a way where I have funded contentment, and it didn't take me earning millions of dollars in order to do that. And I think that's part of the trick, is that it's about people are so focused on high income. Do I want you to have high income? Yes, so that you can actually put that money into assets that actually fund your contentment indefinitely.
Mm-hmm. Passively too,
passively.
Yeah,
and
or maybe
for me, it's go ahead.
Also, maybe even not passively, right? Like, we want some of it to be
passive. For me, real estate is semi-passive. There are a couple properties that I have property managers on, but the New Orleans properties is semi-passive. I still get calls about the toilets or about this over here. I lost my key. I still get some of those things. It's semi-passive, but a lot of people call it. If I wanted it to be 100% passive, I would have to pay a property manager 7 to 10% of the rent, right, which lowers my cash on cash return. So since my properties are kind of in the same general neighborhood, these little things, I don't mind doing it. I have the freedom to do it in the middle of the day. If I'm working, if I had a full-time job, then I would have to give that up for somebody else to go manage it. But, I'm not tripping.
Right. Yeah. No. And, even if it's active, right, in terms of just earning more, you want to put some stuff in passive investments or semi-passive, just because you can't one, you don't want to consume all that cash or all that cash for consumption. But then also you do want your money to work for you.
Right.
So, you work for it. But even, if you like your Wall Street job, though, I think that the most important thing is you have the option, the freedom to choose, what it is you want to do when you have a certain amount of money.
Yeah, you just got to be real honest. Do you really like it? Like, do you really, really like it? Or is it just be real? Is it the money? Like, look in the mirror, just be honest with yourself. And whatever it is that you do love in terms of the how, right? How you want to make money, I can guarantee I can go find you. If you told me you wanted to make money in this way, Lawrence and I, within 10 minutes, could go find 10 people on the internet who are doing it sustainably. Mm-hmm. So it's not a question of whether it's possible or not. It's really about how bad do you want it and how much do you actually love that thing? Are you willing to pursue mastery so that you can actually earn healthily to be able to do that? A lot of people just aren't committed to mastery at anything, man. They just rather be average. And this is, I think mastery is one of the key differentiators between millionaires and those who aren't. They mastered something. Because if you don't have to be the world's best, you just have to be a regional best, or within your company the best, or industry best, or a sub-industry best. You don't have to be in the best in the world. You could be the best in North Carolina or Rocky Mount, North Carolina. You could be the best in the Black community at doing this thing. You could be the best amongst women in a particular age group. You don't have to be the world's best, but you gotta be intentional about being the best in some sort of niche given your skill set.
Yeah, man, I think you're right. And that was something else that made me just start thinking about things in terms of assets and liabilities or expenses or whatever. And that came up with, that's where we kind of came up with the concept of black capital in terms of inventorying what are all the different types of capital in the world. But a big piece of capital that I didn't use to my fullest extent in my 20s and 30s, it wasn't until really recently that I started doing this, is my labor, right? So for most people, because most people, hopefully this will change over time, but as of right now, most people aren't going to go out here and start a business, right? And we want to get as many people as possible out here starting great, successful Black businesses, because that's one piece of our Black core of three. But then a lot of people I don't know about all that, right? So what that means is your labor is going to be your most important piece of just your wealth in a way, right? And your skill set. So like mastery of a marketable skill now and mastery of a marketable skill for the future. That's why those are just so big. And it wasn't until recent that I really understood that too. But now that I understand that in terms of assets and thinking about it in terms of assets, I've been producing like crazy.
100%.
Because I'm I'm a little behind the 8 ball. So my assets that I produce are either some type of model system for people can understand things easier, some type of algorithm or software to make things easier for people to move information back and forth and and the like. And videos like this are assets, articles are assets, just knowledge-based assets. That's what I can bring to the table. But since I made that switch in terms of just thinking about my labor in terms of it being an asset and not wasting it like I did for so long because I wanted to watch Netflix and take more naps. I bet that's basically what it was. It's like, all right, I need to really start using my mind and become a true master at the things that I really care about. Care about too.
So we just want to be clear on what we mean by a skill now and a skill for tomorrow. So if you're a videographer, right? The skills right now are shooting videography for social media, right? And cutting that videography up in many different ways to be used in other platforms natively. But if your future skill set for videography is probably virtual reality, right? How do you actually shoot video in 3D and immersive environments? And so how do you actually focus on the skill set that's making you money now, but also be thinking about that skill set that's actually going to be huge in the future. So this is what we mean by your current skill set and the future skill set. A lot of people just stop learning, right? They stop learning. And this is what the traditional education system says. It says go to college and get a major, which major is not really training, right? You don't really graduate from college with any skills, right? Get a major that's supposed to lead to some sort of industry, and then you're going to ride out in that industry for 40 plus years. That's not the way it works today. You have to constantly be retooling, retraining. Right now, I'm not in a training mindset. Right now, I'm actually in production, similar to you, Lawrence. I'm in production, but I know every 3 to 5 years, I go into hyper training mode where you'll see me at every single conference, not maybe some at the front speaking, but you'll see me in the front row learning, right? So I'll double down because I'm going to college again, but it's not college in the form of a 4-year institution or a master's degree. I'm going to college to the specific niche 20 to 100 people events, right? Where I'm actually getting a refined skill that I believe is like a stock that is actually going to take off. For me, when I see a skill set that I would love and enjoy doing, that I see like an Amazon stock in 2000, right? That's how I do. That's how I look at it. I was like, this skill set is going to be extremely valuable in the future. I'm actually going to start developing it and building it now, because the 10,000 hour rule mastery take 10,000 hours. That's going to take you a decade to really master, and then it's going to take the economy time to catch up to it as well. So that's how I think about skill development. But if you can't language your skills, then you actually probably don't have a skill. Or actually, you probably do, but you're probably not seeking mastery at it.
Right.
You're probably not seeking mastery.
Yeah, you might have the skill, but you still aren't able to communicate the value to get others to believe that you have a skill that is useful to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And, I think what's important is for us to stop thinking in terms of even vehicles and institutions, and thinking more in terms of assets and capital. Right. Because the institutions and the vehicles change. all the time because, you mentioned college right here. College is only one way to build a skill, right?
Wow.
It's not the only way to build like a particular skill. That's
actually master's degree. About 30% of master's degrees are the only way to build a skill. Colleges don't build you any skills, and then there's a lot of master's programs that don't build you skills. Only about 30% of master's degrees actually build you or help you lead with a skill.
And what they do give you is a network and a brand. Yeah, a network and a brand, right? In terms of how to learn, how to do this particular type of thing. And that model is changing because the cost is so high. You know, to get that piece of paper, to get that validation, the cost is, so high that a lot of people just can't, or they shouldn't really even want to afford it at this particular point in time.
Yeah.
Right. So I think, when I'm thinking about like this model that we're going to create in terms of like the Black Family Financial Plan, the Black Family Wealth Plan is, I want to get to the core fundamentals in terms of what needs to be built. So like, I think from the time somebody's born or, very young, we need to be thinking in terms of assets, especially, for them too. Right. And, when you are 6 to 24 years old, really or 22, that's the time to build skills. I mean, that's basically what it is. And that's the asset. So you're building your personal capital, for, that 15.
Bill Gates, Zuckerberg, what are they doing? They were saying, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be in here coding. And that was a skill set. People didn't even believe in the computer at that time or the internet. But what were they doing? But what was Bill Gates doing? Coding, going into this free lab that he happened to have privileged access to, coding. That made the difference. That made the freaking difference.
People talk about that Warren Buffett too, right? So people like Warren Buffett, his dad was a congressperson. Like a lot of people don't know that. But even more than that, though, it's like, why did Warren Buffett become so rich? Now, of course, a lot of it has to do with his discipline and his knowledge and expertise and his philosophy. But some people just talk about he just started when he was young. You know what I mean? He started when he was, 10 years old or was investing.
So with that, as a parent, I'm trying. I know I've encouraged my aunts to do this because they have kids, and one of my aunts, her daughter was, my cousin was switching. She was like, I want to be a DJ this week, and then I want to do this week, and then next week it was I want to do this. And honestly, I think I'm in the mindset. And somebody commented on your Facebook message like how expensive kids' activities are as they get older. But you know what? I think you have to be their biggest cheerleader. Whatever they decide, because it could have ended up being DJing, right? But you got to say, okay, if it's DJing this week, all right, let's do it. We're going to a Guitar Center. We're going to get you this. We're going to get you this. And you can ease into it, but you got to be willing to fully back and support them, right, on that. And then, okay, it's not DJing anymore. Okay, let's figure out how to sell this equipment, right? And then, it's this now. Let's go back to the drawing board. Like passion won't just find you on the couch. Passion only comes by experimenting with many different things. There's some people like Beyonce, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, who found it within 1 or 2 tries. You know what I'm saying? And this is why they were able to start early. But for most people, it doesn't happen that way. So it's really about exposure to different things. But I think the primary thing that we expose our kids to is physical activities. So ballet, piano, this and that. And that's great if they decide to do that. But there's also these mental skill sets that we can be exposing them to at an early age, right? Beyond just we're exposing them to sports, we're exposing them to ballet, we're exposing them to Spanish, etc. These are great, and some people will pursue those paths, but I think there's other things that we can be intentionally exposing our kids to early on.
Yeah, I agree. Like, what about problem solving? Like, how are you, exposing your kid to problem solving? Or how are you exposing your kid to make other people believe, which I think is the most important skill that one can have.
Yes.
Like, how are you exposing children or your kids to like these other things that just aren't like physical labor or aren't some type of badge of honor for you as a parent, just so you can brag to the other parents that my child is in ballet or my child is doing, X, Y, and Z.
Right. Yeah. So my daughter at her lemonade stand last week, she made about $40. And it was Louisiana lemonade stand day. So kids all over the city and all over the state were having out their lemonade stands. It was awesome. And she has 2 lemonades, a strawberry lemonade and a brown sugar lemonade. So we went to the market and her friend came. We invited her friend to come just check her out. And she hired her friend. She said, "You want to work with me?" So her friend worked with her for 15 minutes while her and her dad and I talked. But she enrolled somebody to work with her. I didn't challenge her to do it or anything, and she wanted to do it. She didn't want to just be behind the lemonade stand by herself. She wanted to do it in community, and I know that's going to play out and manifest in how she builds and grows things in the future, right? Because she wants to do it in community. She wants to work with friends and things of that nature. So that was, as you talk about how to influence and get other people to believe, that was just a recent example of my 4-year-old getting someone else to believe and get in alignment with where she was going.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So, I mean, just through this conversation, we see how many just different factors there are when we think about wealth in terms of what are some of the levers moving things up and down and sideways and back and forth and whatever.
Yeah.
And, one thing that you always talk about, Jullien, is like the I guess the benefit or the purpose of a good or a great model is to simplify the process for people or simplify things for people. And, I think that's what we're going to eventually do. And what you're going to see in this podcast is us just working through the model, a lot of the details or most of the details in terms of even the complex things. So eventually we can get to like this simple path or this simple framework that people can follow over the course of their life from cradle to grave to maximize the assets that they have. Right. Or that they want to build, so I'm excited about that. So I guess, what do you think is the first step? I mean, I know we've done a lot of steps in the background, but what do you think is the first step for us to really talk about to really start building out this model for our community to use?
Yeah, I think we have to start with the individual where they're at as the adult. And I think because if we bring up the kids stuff and they don't have kids, I think we miss out on some people. I think there's things that we can discover that help people right here and right now. Of course, we want to start the compounding curve as early as possible so that when they do have kids, they can start those things that there was nobody there to tell them about, but like what we can help them with right now. How do you sell your single family home and get a multifamily and start house hacking and start house huddling, et cetera? Is a 401k actually the best place for your money to be right now? And when you think about it 50 years from now, is an IRA actually the best thing for you? And everybody will have preferences based on their risk tolerances. But I think we can help people make some key decisions and move as a family. And again, this is not just you and a significant other. We're talking about with your parents, with your sisters and brothers, aunts and uncles. The Watkins, they have a family bank, right? So when we talk about family, it's not just a nuclear family. We're talking about everyone, and even beyond blood. Like I do some real estate investments with my friends. You know what I'm saying? So it's even beyond blood. But I think we just have to start with the individual where they're at and empower them. And then I think it will spill over into the kids and hopefully spill up to their parents. Like if your parents don't have a will or estate plan, that's going to cost you. It's just going to cost you, hands down. It's going to go to probate. It's going to take time. You're going to come out and pocket $10,000 for the funeral on your own. Perhaps you don't have $10,000. Like it has to spill up. It's going to spill up and it's going to spill down. So, but we got to start with where they're at and help them in the moment.
Yeah, and I think that's true. I think we need to offer some advice, not even advice, offer what we've seen other people do, and then what we may do, and share that with people in terms of where they are now. I think it goes deeper than that, though, man. In terms of like eventually, like the point that we're trying to get to, in terms of the purpose of what it is that we're doing, right? And I think. I'm a visual learner. That's my dominant learning style. So I think in models, I think in pictures, I think in like that type of systematic type of thinking. And, to me, it's a couple of different things, right? So for me, like the very first the top level objective is to get the overarching models like in place in terms of, what people like, what does this whole wealth thing look like, right? And right now, I'm actually looking at 3 different models in terms of what that is, right? So one, in terms of going back to the Facebook question that I asked yesterday is, what are some of the major life decisions that people go through, right? And I think it's some type of timeline in terms of you're born, you're dead, and what happens after you're dead, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that last piece I just added from this conversation because earlier, right? And what are the major steps? You know, you start school or whatever it is, then you start your apprenticeship or college or whatever. You get your first job or start your, a business or whatever it is. You buy a house or you have a child, you get married, all those different types of just life decisions in terms of what that looks like. And then also, like, what are some of the major things that tragedy that can happen to you that you need to protect yourself against at the same time? Because those are the positive life things or milestones, but then there might be negative milestones too you have to think about at the same time. So that's one of the models. The second thing is, when we talk about 401k or with 403b or whatever it is, right? All these acronyms, all these different things, they're all vehicles.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're vehicles to sometimes to confuse people in terms of like, you just, throw out these acronyms and get people paralysis by analysis. Like, you just do what you want to do with my money and just make me money. Right. So, how do we get like even a more simple framework in terms of like, what does it look like in terms of the big pieces of the puzzle that you always need to think about as you're building out this wealth? And applying that framework or whatever that looks like to this timeline that we have already talked about in terms of what assets do you need to build young in life and what assets do you need to build older in life. Right? And I think the third piece is just like an inventory of assets, right? So it's kind of like, what is it called? What assets and liabilities? Your balance sheet. Like, what is your balance sheet look like in terms of the assets that you have, financial, that's what we'll be focusing on. But then also you start thinking about social and other types of capital too, that, actually go into the whole wealth equation, which we may or may not explore because that may make this project too big for us.
It would expand it because then we're talking about your social friends versus your successful friends. Your successful friends, your social friends might be liabilities, right? Your successful friends are assets. So you're right.
Yeah. And, Craig Burns mentioned real estate and multifamily houses. So for me, that's a very important thing to discuss, but it's not the top level in terms of what needs to be discussed. That's still a vehicle to get you from point A to point B.
Right.
Yeah. So, I don't know, but there's so much stuff that has to be learned to even get to those top level models that we're just going to discuss and kind of, just go through.
Right now in our shared Google document right now, I'm just capturing some commandments that, I think are just universal that are actually counterintuitive. I always share my chart with you of all things that we were taught wrong. And I think if we just got people to believe in that one sheet, right, and believe and see that the things on the left are actually the truth, or actually things on the right are actually the truth, they would move differently. Because once your mind changes, then you start seeing the world and opportunities differently, and then your behavior follows. So that's going to really be our work. It's going to be a mental thing. Be ye transformed by the renewing of one's mind, not from the renewing of your the vehicle that you choose. It'll be by the renewing of your mind and how you see wealth, how you see yourself, how you see the future, how you see money, how you see funded contentment. Because once those definitions in your mind change, you start to move differently. If I thought love in college was go get the flyest, go get a dime piece, right? Then that's going to shape how I move in terms of the dating world. But then if I change my definition of love to find someone who's actually going to bring you peace, not a dime piece, but somebody who will bring you peace, then that shapes the way I'm actually looking at the world, right? Because my belief about love has changed. So it's really going to be a lot of mental work that we have to do to convince people that there's another way, and some of what they've been taught, the programming might have been right for past generations, but not in today's world.
And actually, this is the selfish me, or the selfish part of me talking, is for everyone else, and I want other people to benefit, but I really want to know for myself in terms of what I need to change in terms of my own belief patterns, my own belief systems, at the very same time. Because as I said at the beginning of this conversation, I did not do everything right. I mean, I did a lot of things right, and that's why we live the lifestyle that we live today. But then there are a lot of just opportunities that I missed because I wasn't financially literate. from a personal finance perspective. And,
Yep.
I'm highly motivated, and Julien's highly motivated to creating this system in terms of, what does it look like to be wealthy, to be truly wealthy in America?
Yep, 100%. As a Black person.
As a Black person. As a Black person. So
cool. Man,
I think we covered a lot.
I love it. And we're going to be back here every Wednesday. We'd like to start around 2 Central, which is 3 Eastern. So you can set your phone alarm. Eventually we'll get a text message thing set up so that you can get notified by us when we're going live. But again, this is just our research unfolding as we read and learn. In between this, we'll be bringing that knowledge to you. We're also here to learn from you. Any books, any websites, any things that we should be looking into, please share them with us, because we are open. We are coming in as learners with beginner's mind, as Lawrence said, and we want to create the master plan, the Black Family Financial Master Plan. So thank you for being here. Please share this so that we can get the word out, because we believe that this should be a collective conversation, not just Lawrence and I. We believe that this should be a collective conversation because it's going to be a collective tool and resource once it's done. Yeah, man. And the 3 books that I'm reading now, I read together. My mind kind of jumbles like that. Helps me a little bit better. Is The Geometry of Wealth. That's the first one. The second one is The Business Owner's Guide to Financial Freedom. And then there's also Family Inc. Using business principles to maximize your family's wealth. Family Inc. Geometry of Wealth.
And The Business Owner's Guide to Financial Freedom.
Business Owner Guide to Financial Freedom. Got it.
Cool, man. Well, thanks, guys, for listening in. We got about 32 people watching right now. And it was important for us to make this live, right? So because some people just think that models or systems or whatever thought processes just come out of nowhere. But you'll see how many hours it really takes to, just think about what the model should be in terms of, how we push forward. And hopefully you learn a lot from our stories, our mistakes, our successes, and take those and apply to your lives as well.
Yep. All right, Chief. I'll catch you next week, man.
All right, man. You have a great day. And thanks everybody for watching. Talk to you soon.
Peace.
Peace.